Сейчас появится. Так, включить видео, наверное, надо, да? Угу. Да, я извиняюсь, немножко в темноте я буду, поскольку тут у нас в Петербурге очень сейчас сумрачно. Значит, мы хотели бы открыть, наверное, а вот наш Билимория, господин, здесь, Пурушоттама.
Пока не видно.
Я думаю, что мы можем тогда начать открытие без него, предоставим слово Татьяне Александровне Дубянской, а потом уже он подключится, и мы дадим ему слово, чтобы он высказался. Хорошо? Тогда слово предоставляем. Ну, наверное, надо сказать,
давайте, да, вы так все-таки как-нибудь официально скажите, что мы здесь
участников нашей первой экологической конференции, организованной Центром исследований философии и культуры Пурушоттама. Надеемся на продолжение сотрудничества. Пожалуйста, Татьяна Александровна.
Спасибо большое. Я хочу поблагодарить. Одну секундочку. Давайте так, сейчас мы уберем микрофоны там, где они не должны работать, наверное. Ольга Павловна, у вас есть такая функция, по-моему, убрать просто внешний звук, чтобы у нас не было потом проблем с выкладыванием. И еще один технический момент. Кажется, мы хотели всех спросить, есть ли возражения против записи, да, потому что или выкладывание, то есть как-то...
Таня, у вас звук выключен.
Коллеги, если кто-то против, значит, записи, пожалуйста, напишите в чат.
Да, доброе утро. Спасибо большое, Рузанна Владимировна, за открытие, и спасибо всем дорогим коллегам за организацию этого мероприятия. Я здесь в качестве только одного из организаторов, ну и поскольку я представляю Александра Михайловича, то я таким образом имею честь открыть эту конференцию как его, в каком-то смысле правопреемник. Я хотела спросить, у нас есть англоязычные слушатели или как нам говорить сейчас по-английски, по-русски? Рузанна Владимировна, как скажете?
Да давайте по-русски, я так смотрю, среди участников большая часть русскоязычных.
Ну, хорошо, да, тогда...
Или как вам удобно, как вы считаете?
Да, нет, мне как-то, в общем-то, все равно, просто как будет более уместно, да, там, если запись тоже будет, скажите, как...
Таня, может быть, вы спросите по-английски то же самое?
Do we have any English speaking? I think actually let's do it in English because everyone present, I think, understands English. And because there is a big interest towards this conference from the Indian side and from a number of foreign colleagues who might actually join in very soon. So I think let's really stick to English. At least I will be doing that for the sake of their beginning of this conference. Am I audible?
Простите, пожалуйста, но судя по списку тех, кто по списку участников, вот Мартин Хрибек, может быть, единственный.
Да, дело в том, что мы будем записывать, поэтому там будут еще, то есть эта запись, и сейчас могут присоединиться, насколько я знаю, коллеги из Польши тоже, поэтому я думаю, что мы можем... I know, Martin, you're fine with Russian, but probably there will be some... Well, let's do the one more thing. Ольга Павловна, можно мне открыть права хоста, чтобы я начала презентацию свою?
Таня, а где это делается?
Значит, там есть список, когда вы откроете список участников, и там вам нужно нажать на «больше» или «more» и сделать этого человека
Сейчас, секундочку.
make a host или что-то в этом роде.
Лучше сделать co-host, потому что идет запись. Если она сделает хостом, запись прервется.
Угу.
Make a co-host.
У меня есть сделать организатором.
Там есть еще соорганизатор.
Такого нету, Мартин.
Тогда не знаю. Тогда пробуйте.
Тогда я могу записать в этой части.
Все. теперь вы являетесь.
Хорошо. Okay, so I think we do have English-speaking participants, so I will be glad to share with you my small presentation because I would like to give a small personal touch to this beginning of the conference. Once again, heartfelt thanks for all the organizers. I think this has a potential of becoming an event which will again unite scholars of India in Russia and beyond. And I would like to underline that my father was probably one of the figures really who was one of those people who was really working and trying to make their Indological community more inclusive and more open to each other, because he was really promoting the idea of always personal peace, tolerance, and friendship between different schools of Indology and different clans that we have. Now, I would like to briefly speak about his life. He was born in Moscow, in the heart of the city, on the Gogolevsky Boulevard, which is their Arbat area. And his first years actually were spent in the Kazan region because they were evacuated as the war started. He was very active in his childhood. He was studying quite a lot and playing piano. So this heart of Moscow, the lanes of Arbat, was really the place of his, as people say now, that was really his place of power and the place with which he has associated himself most. Also, there were a lot of trips to the Crimea and to the Moscow region. And at that time, I don't think he had any idea that he would ever have any interest in India. I think he told me that in childhood books, he of course recognized India as a very special place, as other exotic places, but a thought never occurred to him that one day he might actually connect his life to this place. And yet, then he was actually thinking about a musical career. He studied in this central school named after Gogol for 10 years and graduated with a gold medal. And actually, because he was really good at different subjects, he was really not sure what to do after he finished and got the school leaving certificate. So at that time, kind of all roads were open, and the family was very much keen on seeing him as a musician because he played piano quite well. So after graduating, he actually decided to try it with a musical career. And 4 years he spent in the Gnesen State Musical College, where he was professionally studying piano. And this is something which helped him later on in life a lot because of more than one reason. Now, during this college years, my father was able to make good friends with the people from the musical world who remained his dear friends for many, many years to come. So this musical circles of Moscow was one of his first social circles, which remained important to him all these years. And actually he was doing so well, and his musical talents were quite accomplished, and he managed to enter Moscow State Conservatory and was hoping to start learning better and to develop himself into professional pianist. But that was not to happen because as you saw, he belonged to the generation of the war kids, and that generation had a serious gap in male population also, and also there were plans of the Soviet government also for extending the Soviet army. So at that years, students of colleges and universities were practically not exempted from army draft, and after 2 or 3 months in the conservatoire, he had to leave it, and he was drafted to the Soviet army, where he had to spend full 3 years. His musical background in a way helped him, because that allowed him to apply for a special place. So he was drafted to a radio unit which located in Moscow, and because he had musical background, he was also allowed to play in orchestra there, which was something like a better position in the army ranks, and also it was within Moscow, so even when he was in the army, he could sometimes practice music and play not only in this orchestra, but also play piano occasionally. But having been said, a musical career is not really possible after 3 years of army, because no serious practice was possible. So again, after the 3 years, again, all doors opened. Now he was in the status of, he had an army rank of a junior lieutenant, and that was a very attractive, that made him a very attractive candidate for different higher education places. And again, he was deciding what to do, but at that time, there were really better hints for the future road. And he was very friendly with his childhood friend who shared musical school with him, Sementsov, who was already a student of Indology, and he lobbied very much for the Institute of Asian and African Studies, which was the Institute of Oriental Languages at that time, a part of Moscow State University, and that got my father very interested in this region. And more to it, at that year, 1965, there was a new group opened for first-year students in this Institute of Oriental Languages, which was Tamil language. And that looked like, although there are people in the university were trying to convince him that he might as well want to study Japanese or any other languages which were more prestigious, and yet he felt a great attraction towards this word Tamil, which was quite unknown to him then, but he decided to go on, and that connected my father's life to India and Tamil Nadu for all these years to come. And for 55 years, he was associated with the Institute of Oriental Languages, later on the Institute of Asian and African Studies of Moscow State University. He graduated and defended his thesis dedicated on to the Tamil lyrics. That was in 1972, and he was educating himself very much due to a very refined and accomplished circle of Moscow Indologists, which existed in the late 60s and 1970s. Among his teachers, I would like to name Yuri Glazov, who was one of his Tamil teachers. There was, of course, Semyon Rudin, a great scholar from Leningrad, who was not his teacher of Tamil during the university years, but became his teacher later on when my father especially went to Leningrad to take classes from Rudin together with his co-student, Dr. Margarita Albedil. And of course, my father was very close to Dr. Yulia Alikhanova, who was his mentor at the university, and with other Indologists such as Oktyabrina Volkova and Tatyana Yelizarenkova, and many, many others. So the 70s were the formative years, and one of the biggest events of that decade was, of course, my father's trip to India. It didn't happen easily. I think from what I know, there were several interviews, quite humiliating. Not from the very beginning he was allowed to go because his political views were not quite were not quite fit. He was steadfastly refusing to join the Communist Party. He was getting these offers over and over again, but he was saying no, and that made him not a very good candidate and not a very reliable candidate for such a trip, because there was always a potential that a person who is not very reliable would actually perhaps want to stay on and not return. But finally, the decision was taken, and he got a grant from the ICCR, and maybe it was a grant from the Soviet Ministry of Education, a joint grant with India, and he became a student of postgraduate student of Madras University. That was in 1978 and 79. Here I would like to note that we and our family have been preparing this book on my father's letters from India from these years. I wished it could have been published by now, but this year was quite stressful, so we really couldn't finish all the projects we were going to finish, and I think my colleagues Olga Vecherina will speak about it more. A few projects connected with my father's name which are yet pending, but we really hope they will very soon be published. So one of them is the book of letters in Russian language, and I'm also going to publish an article on these letters in English from Italy very soon. Now, later years were of course connected with India very much. There were a lot of trips with students, academic trips, trips just for taking the taste of India and sharing India with his students. I think maybe some other participants will say a few words about that. I would also like to mention the Tamil seminar. About it also other participants will say a few words. It has been there for quite a few years and have been successful as an event, joining different Tamil scholars of Moscow together. And just a few photos from different academic events. I also would like to mention that my father had very special relationships with Indologists and especially Tamil scholars from different European countries. It's worth mentioning that Polish Indologists have very good connections with my father. They have been they were on a number of occasions inviting him for defenses of different dissertations as an expert on different occasions, and of course as a member of a number of conferences. My father was also a stable member of the Pandanos conference. It's a one of European conferences on Indian studies between Prague, Warsaw, Krakow, Cagliari, and Calicut in India, and Milano, of course. In Moscow, he was loved by his students very much, and also had a very good relationship with artistic circles, and not only piano, but also the circles of Russian dancers, especially Bharatanatyam dancers, but not only. So there is a few dance companies which promote Indian dance, which were especially close to my father, especially Nirmala Group and a few others. And just to conclude this, a few personal touches, because I think many people know that my father had this adventurous spirit and really loved traveling and kept on traveling to different places. I would mention this once again. I mentioned it on many other occasions that I think it's a really big accomplishment for a person like him to start driving a car and getting license when he was 60, and he had thus quite almost 2 decades of happy driving and visiting places he wanted to visit, and of course this recreational angle and different activities connected to dacha and trips. So I think he was a person, very young in spirit and friendly and engaging, and not only we in our family, but a lot of colleagues and friends remember him like that, and will cherish his memories. So I'm very grateful for this conference to be named after him. I would just conclude saying that my father was a very modest person, and he would, of course, not he would be a bit embarrassed knowing that there is a conference named after him. And yet I would say, let it be, because again, I hope his name would be serving as an idea for unification of people, friendly relationship, and great cooperation between different countries and different schools of Indology in our country. Thank you very much. I have to join now because today is the day of his passing away, so I have to join my family in different commemorative events now, so I will leave the conference, but I am confident that it will go perfectly well, and thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, dear Tatiana, for such warm words, and it's very, for us, it's very important to that you shared with us such a memory, very beautiful moment. So now I will give a word to our leading scholar and our head of our program committee, Professor Purushottama Bilimoria, who is an eminent specialist in philosophy and Indian philosophy. And please, dear Professor.
Mike, please put it on.
Мне кажется, исчез наш.
I was wishing namaskar. I was very touched to hear Tatyanya's a recollection of her father, and it's really wonderful to see a conference named after him. I have only just arrived a bit over 40 hours ago from San Francisco, so I'm a little jet lagged. I will only take a few minutes to welcome one and all to a conference that's been put together in association with the Center for Study of Indian Philosophy and Culture. It's called Purushottama, but I think it's the overlap, the coincidence of the two names are purely coincidental. I don't think there is any real connection, although my grandfather did think of naming me after Harihara, who is also known as Purushottama, although it's usually associated with Vishnu and Krishna, but there's also a Harihara form, and I'm more inclined towards Shiva than Vishnu, so it's not unusual to have Shaivites carry the name Purushottama as well, although not entirely Shaivites. We have a very complicated Parsi background, which is where the Bilimoria comes from. Just a couple of reflections on how I come to be associated with a Russian academy, basically, you know, the academic of scholars in Indology. Just some little reflections there. My Sanskrit teacher in Australia, where I studied mostly, as well as when I would be in India, but my basic formal qualifications were undertaken in Australia and New Zealand a bit before that. His name was Robert Slonek. Robert Slonek is probably not known outside of Australia. He was a Czech national who grew up during the Soviet period, or the occupation period, and had complete familiarity with Russian, Slavic, several Slavic languages, and incredible Latvian, Lithuania, the Romance languages, and he studied with John Burrow in Oxford. So that's where he studied got his PhD in Sanskrit, which was on some reflections of the Indo-European laryngeals in the Slav prosodic paradigms. This is quite amazing for somebody to write a thesis on that. So it will always be a great mention. And we did some very interesting projects together on Indologism, the rise of Indology in the European context and connections with Sanskrit and so on. So that was sort of one connection, if you like, I had. And then some years later, I actually visited Czechoslovakia after the Iron Curtain had come down. And he got me to go and visit Dusan Zabitel, if I'm getting the pronunciation right, Zabitel, who is a friend of his, who was an Indologist, prominent Indologist in Czechoslovakia, but then had to leave his post in Charleston University. And when I got there, even though the Soviet occupation had ended, of course, he did not, he was beyond retirement age, I think, I'm not sure, he didn't get back his job. He was driving taxis, but he was still writing, and he showed me some of the writings that he was doing in that time, which was quite amazing to see that somebody from the Eastern Bloc continuing to do very interesting work, but under constraints from the Soviet regime. And then I was introduced to the work of David Zilberman. Some people might know he's a very prominent Indian philosopher. His great book is The Birth of Meaning in Indian Thought, and various others. And his family got in touch with me. His sister, basically, who lives in Chicago, they had sort of come out almost together, I think, in the 1970s to the US. He died rather young, but wrote very important things. And his papers have now been been collected, and they've been sent to me with a view to getting them published as a book. And I'm pursuing that at the moment with Bloomsbury. So it's another. And then at various Sanskrit conferences in various places, I would meet people like Dr. Victoria Lysenko, Natalia Lidova, who came to the World Sanskrit Conference that I had organized in Melbourne, which was a great delight. And was I think the only Russian who represented at that particular Sanskrit conference. But of course, later Sanskrit conferences, the numbers grew. So from mid-1990s to early 2020s, the numbers, of course, were quite delightful to see large representation. So I think one of the largest ones was in Vancouver just about 2-3 years ago, which is where I met Professor Ruzana Pushko, and I think Natalia Safina, and perhaps a few other people. So the association, I was just saying, with Russian Indology has been growing, and this is this particular opportunity to actually be part of this Center for the growth. I would say the study and perhaps the future growth of Indian philosophy in Russia is very welcome, very welcoming event, for no doubt, and of course the neighboring countries as well that are now taking interest in being part of this movement. I mean, the people in Slovenia are very keen to be associated, and I'm sure, and people in Ukraine as well have been in touch. So this is a great moment for Moscow to lead a regrowth. Let's not say growth. I mean, I think it's always been there. It's just been a little quiet for some time because of, I think, political exigencies. But it's and I think everybody still reads Sabetsky when they introduce the Buddhist logic. So it's not all as it were, put under the carpet, vanished. It's been there shimmering, and now it's having a flourishing and it's like a season. The flowers, the flowers that are perennial may not appear in wintertime, but then come spring and summer, they blossom again. So, and with the leadership of Professor Ruzana Pushko, we're heading to a bright new horizon of Indological studies with the emphasis on philosophy, perhaps religion. I might finally mention, I'm just an individual, but I come with two other interesting and important contributions, or at least forums. One is the Journal of Sophia, which most people know, it's been doing cross-cultural philosophy work, and we're looking to publishing wonderful papers. I think we're already talking about proceedings from a previous seminar, this conference, and future conferences, and also the Journal of Dharma Studies, which is now has a subtitle of Asian and Transcultural Philosophy, Religion, and Ethics. So it's now broadened enough to take papers from this conference and future such conferences as well. So these are great opportunities for a more global representation and exposure, if you like. People don't know what's going on. I tell people I'm going to Moscow. What's happening there? Some people have just no idea. So it'd be good for them to read more of the material and the papers that are books, including translations, if possible, from Russian to English, and of course English to Russian as well. So more people would get to know about the great potential and the great heritage that you bring to this discipline and tradition. Thank you. And so I might say dhanyavad and shukriya.
Thank you very much for this presentation, wonderful presentation. And besides other sources of publishing of materials, we are organizing the proceedings of this conference in English. So it's really huge area where our participants can publish their works. So thank you very much for your presentation, for your opening word.